Om Vishwandarpana Drishyamana Nagari Tulyannijantargatam Pashyannatmani Mayaya Bahirivod Bhutan Yatha Nidraya Yasakshat Kurute Prabodha Samaye Swatmanameva Dvayam Tasmai Shri Guru Murtaye Nama Idam Shri Dakshina Murtaye नारायणं पद्मभुवं वसिष्ठं शक्तिं च तत्पुत्रपराशरं च व्यासं शुकं गौडपदं महान्तं गोविन्दयोगीन्द्रमथास्य शिष्यं श्रीशङ्कराचार्यमथास्य पद्मपादं च हस्तामलकं च शिष्यं तन्तोटकं वार्तिककारमन्यान् अस्मद्गुरून् सन्ततमानतोऽस्मि श्रुतिस्मृतिपुराणानाम् आलयं करुणालयं नमामि भगवत्पादं शङ्करं लोकशङ्करं शङ्करं शङ्कराचार्यं केशवं बादरायणं सूत्रभाष्यकृतौ वन्दे भगवन्तौ पुनः पुनः परब्रह्मनिष्ठं स्वतो धर्मनिष्ठं अहिंसैकनिष्ठं स्वशिष्यै सुजुष्टं यतीनां वरिष्ठं गुरूणां गरिष्ठं दयानन्दरूपं मदाचार्यमीडे नमः श्रीपरमार्थाय संसाराध्यासनाशिने श्रोत्रियब्रह्मनिष्ठाय तस्मै ब्रह्मविदे नमः सदाशिवसमारम्भां शङ्कराचार्यमध्यमाम् अस्मदाचार्यपर्यन्तां वन्दे गुरुपरम्पराम् ॐ We'll start with the Mangala Shloka. Vasudevendra Yogindram Natva Jnanapradam Gurum Mumukshunam Hitarthaya Tattva Bodho Bhidhiyate. I welcome you all to the 48th class of the Fundamentals of Vedanta series. When the rope is not known as the rope, it is invariably mistaken as a snake or something else, something other than the rope. Similarly, when I don't know myself for what I really am, I invariably make a mistake about myself. So I mistake the I, not I. I mistake the Atma to be the Anātma. And therefore, Tattva Bodha gets into this Atma Vichara. Therefore, the student asks, Atma Kaha? What is this Atma? How should I know myself? Because you are telling me that this mixing up of the I and the not I is the cause of all of my suffering. So how do I really know myself? Who am I? So sthula sukshma karana sharirat vyatiriktah panchakoshatita san avasthatraya sakshi satchidananda swarupa sanyastishtati sa atma. So 11 anatmas are negated here. Shariratrayam, Kosha Panchakam and Avasthatrayam. Because these are the anatmas that I tend to mix up with the Atma. And then followed a discussion on each of these anatmas, because it is important to understand the anatma as anatma so that I don't mix them up with the Atma. I am able to exclude the Anātma from my understanding of who I am. I am able to exclude the attributes of the Anātma from my understanding of who I am. So then the student asks, Tarhi Atma Kaha? Again he asks, after all of this has been negated, because he says, you have negated everything that I thought I was. Now what is left? For which the Guru replies, Satchidananda Swarupaha. You have negated whatever can be negated, whatever is left is non-negatable, which cannot be negated. And that is you. You can negate everything that is addressable as this, but you finally cannot negate that the very observer, the very knower, who is present as the I. So Satchidananda Swarupaha. What is this Satchidananda Swarupaha? Therefore the student asks, Sat kim, Chit kim, Ananda kaha? And we started off with Chit kim. What is this Chit? For which Tattva Bodha, the Guru said, Jnana Swarupaha. It is of the nature of consciousness. So these three bodies, they are inherently material, as we saw, and therefore they are inert. Being inert, they are just like the desk or the wall, which are materials. They cannot know anything, neither themselves nor anything else. But then these bodies have sentiency. So how is it that they become sentient is the question. The question is answered with the example of the moon, because a non-luminous moon, inherently non-luminous, how does it become luminous? We say it becomes luminous by borrowing the luminosity. Who does it borrow the luminosity from? From another source that is inherently self-luminous. So similarly here these three bodies are compared to the moon. They don't have any inherent sentiency, but they appear to be sentient. How is it so? Because they have borrowed this sentiency, they have borrowed this consciousness. And from whom have they borrowed this consciousness? Whatever source they have borrowed the consciousness from cannot be material. Because our rule is that anything inherently material doesn't fundamentally have this capability to know, doesn't have consciousness. Therefore, they have borrowed this consciousness from a non-material source. And what is this non-material source? It is you, the Atma. So oftentimes we phrase it as I have consciousness. We often think of it this way, I have consciousness. But the idea of having consciousness itself is flawed. Tattva Bodha is telling me, you are that consciousness. And what is this consciousness? From the example of the moon and the sunlight, we drew upon 5 principles. And the same 5 principles we extended to consciousness also. Consciousness is not a part, product, or property of the 3 bodies. Consciousness is an independent principle that pervades the 3 bodies and makes them sentient. Consciousness is not limited by the boundaries of the 3 bodies. Fourth one is, even if the 3 bodies come and go, consciousness continues to exist. The last one is that even in the absence of these 3 bodies, consciousness is not non-existent. It cannot be transacted with, or it doesn't transact just because the medium for transaction is absent. That's all. Consciousness is very much existent. It is just not transactable. So I am a mixture of this Atma and Anātma, the consciousness and the inert. And I need to be able to identify myself. I need to train myself to identify with the consciousness, which is the real I. This is the message of Chit Swarupa. Then the next question that we addressed was Ananda Kaha. What is this Ananda? Because you said that Atma is Ananda Swarupam. So we all have an idea of experiential happiness. We have all experienced happiness. But we have this idea that happiness comes from sense objects, contact with sense objects. Then Vedanta demolishes this idea, saying that no object has inherently something known as happiness. If an object inherently had something called happiness, then the object should uniformly give happiness to everybody. That is not the case. If an object inherently had something called happiness, the object should constantly give happiness to whoever possesses it. Even that is not the case, because after a while the novelty factor fades and then boredom sets in and this person starts to look for another source of happiness. And if sense object contact was necessary for happiness, then I can never explain happiness in deep sleep, because there is absolutely no sense object there. Because of these reasons, Vedanta says that happiness is not something that is associated with objects. Then how does happiness arise upon sense object contact? That is the question, for which Vedanta points out that the mind becomes happy now and then. But as we have said, even the mind is an object, it doesn't inherently have something called happiness. Then where does mind get this happiness from? So again, we go back to our favorite example. How does the moon become luminous? How does a non-luminous moon become luminous? It has borrowed luminosity. So how does the mind that inherently doesn't have any happiness, how does it become happy? It borrows this from another source whose nature is happiness, whose nature is this fullness, wholeness, completeness, limitlessness. When does it borrow it? Vedanta points out that it borrows it when the mind is in a conducive state in which it is able to manifest my fullness, wholeness, and completeness. It's something like the sun is always shining. But when there are clouds in the sky, I don't see the shining sun. That doesn't mean that the sun is not shining. Now, when do I see the shining sun? When the clouds clear, I am able to see the shining sun. So similarly, I am always whole, full, and complete. But when the mind has these clouds of desire, that I want to change something, I am not comfortable in this current situation, then in that state of mind, my fullness, wholeness, completeness does not manifest. But when a desire is satisfied, at that point, the mind is in a conducive state. It is not restless. At that point, it is not looking to change something. It is comfortable with the current situation. In that comfortable, conducive state of mind, my fullness, wholeness, my own completeness and limitlessness, that manifests, and that is what we call experiential happiness. So there are 4 stages involved. In fact, before the 4 stages, there is a precursor, a stage that precedes all of this, which is like the presence of clouds in the sky. When there is a desire in the mind, when the mind is restless, then that vritti is a rajasic vritti. So in that rajasic vritti, my fullness, wholeness, completeness is not reflected, not manifested. But then when there is a sense object contact, a contact with an object of my liking, then this rajasic vritti, that was longing for that object, that goes away and is replaced by a tripti vritti, which is a satviki vritti. So the sense object contact leads to a tripti vritti or a satviki vritti. These are all material changes in the mind only, because vritti is subtle material. Apanchīkrita panchamahabhutaih kritam. Then in this sattviki vritti, my wholeness, fullness, completeness is reflected. And that is what we call koshananda or anandamaya kosha. The priya, moda and pramoda vritti. And this is what I call experiential happiness. So sense object contact, sattviki vritti, reflection of Atmananda, experiential happiness. But then I am not aware of the middle two stages. So I connect the sense object contact with the experiential happiness, saying that objects are giving me happiness. So this is similar to the dog's logic. Because the dog is chewing on this bone, there is bone contact that leads to laceration in its own mouth, that leads to oozing of its own blood, and then it sucks its own blood, saying that this blood is coming from the bone because it's not aware of the middle two stages. So bone contact leads to tasty blood. We say that whatever mistake the dog is making, the same mistake the human being is also making. Therefore, these objects inherently don't have this happiness. In fact, whatever happiness I am experiencing is arising from me, the Atma. I am the source of all the happiness that I can ever experience. So we use the law of exclusion, saying that there is a subject and there is the object. The objects inherently don't have any happiness. So when the object comes in contact with the subject, if there is happiness, the happiness must arise from the subject only. But then we saw that somebody can raise an objection based on this, saying that objects inherently don't have any sorrow also. The sorrow also arises when the object contacts the subject. So if the objects inherently don't have any sorrow and the sorrow arises on the subject-object contact, then the sorrow must also arise from the subject. And therefore this person can argue that Atma is not Sukha Swarupaha, but it is Dukkha Swarupaha. And for this Vedanta replies that if Dukkha was my nature, then number one, I can never be comfortable being unhappy, being sorrowful. Because anything that is against my nature, against my natural state of existence, I try to expel it. Like when a particle, a foreign particle enters my eye, then I don't feel comfortable with it. I try to remove it. Vedanta points out that it is the sorrow that is like the foreign particle. When it enters the system, I try to expel it. That itself shows that I am not comfortable being sorrowful. That cannot be my natural state of existence. So then, the second point that Vedanta brings up is that in deep sleep state, what I experience is happiness. If sorrow was my nature, in deep sleep also I must have felt sorrowful. But that is not the case. In deep sleep, I experience happiness. Where does that happiness come from? It is there just because the nature of Atma is this fullness, wholeness, completeness, and that is also experienced in deep sleep state. Therefore, Atma is Sukha Swarupaha only. Then we are left with the third question, which is Sat Kim. And we are not dealt with this topic specifically here, but we have looked at the Satyam topic in detail earlier. So Sat Kim, the Guru replies, saying, Kalatraye tishtati iti Sat. That which is there in all the three periods of time. So we go back to our bangle example that we had seen earlier. So when we inquire into what this bangle really is, we find that there is no substance called bangle at all. What we find is that there is only this gold. So gold is the essence of the bangle. We say gold is the saraha, saraha. When I touch the bangle, I am touching the gold. When I weigh the bangle, I am weighing the gold. The color of the bangle is the color of the gold. When I'm looking at the bangle, I'm really looking at the gold. So gold is the saraha. And then before the bangle came into existence, the gold was there. Even now, when the bangle is there, the gold is there. And even after the bangle goes, the gold will remain. Therefore, gold is nityaha. As we had said, nitya vastu vivekaha. Nityaha means that which is there in all the three periods of time. Kalatrayepi tishtati iti sat. And we also find that gold is the satyaha also. Why? Because it is the gold that really exists. The bangle is just a name and form. The bangle borrows existence from the gold. The gold is the lender of existence. The gold is what independently exists. The bangle only exists dependently. And therefore, Vedanta finds it necessary to have two words to indicate this difference in the order of reality. Gold is a higher order of reality because that is what independently exists. The bangle is a lower order of reality. It exists dependently. And therefore, Vedanta says Satyam is that which independently exists, and Mithya is that which dependently exists. Mithya is only name and form, Satyam is the actual content. So, in the world of gold ornaments, it is gold that is the Satyam. Now, the question is in this world, what is the Satyam? What really exists? And as we said, science has been trying to look into this as well. And for this, science has been trying to probe into matter. And they said molecules exist. And then they said, no, 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 no. Molecules don't really exist by themselves because they are also dependent upon the atoms. So initially, in their vision, molecules were Satyam, and then atoms became Satyam. Everything is composed of atoms. Atoms are the ultimate reality. But then they broke the atoms also and they came to the subatomic particles, protons, neutrons, electrons. And then those were considered to be the reality, making up this universe. But then they broke up that also. Now they have 40 or so subatomic particles. And they are trying to even break those up, but then they find strange things that they are not even able to say whether what exists is really a particle or a wave. So science has not really been able to reach any conclusion about this. What is it that really exists? They don't really know. And moreover, science has been obsessed with the observed, obsessed with the observed. And therefore, they are only probing into the observed to find out what really exists. They have forgotten about the observer. In fact, they cannot talk about the observer. As we have said, the ultimate observer can never be observed, and therefore it is beyond all these other pramanas, whether it be pratyaksha, anumana, whatever. And therefore, they are trying to do the best they can by trying to probe into the observed, but Vedanta says you're looking in the wrong place. By this, you will never come to know what is it that really exists, because you have left the observer aside. Then, if we were to ask Vedanta, what is it that really exists? Vedanta points out, Atma Satyam Tadanyat Sarvam Mithyeti. This is how Tattva Bodha starts with a bang, it starts. And what does it mean? That you are the Satyam. that you, the Atma, are the Satyam of this entire world. Tadanyat sarvam mithyeti. Everything else in names and forms, just like this bangle, necklace, ring, etc. You are like the gold in the world of gold ornaments. You alone really exist independently. So Atma is Sat Swarupaha. Kalatrepi tishtati iti sat. Just like the gold was there before the bangle is, the gold is there even when the bangle is, and the gold remains even after the bangle goes. You were there even before this world came into existence. You are really there even now. And you will continue to remain even after this world goes. So what is this Jagat then? This Jagat is reduced to mithya, names and forms. The Jagat cannot be classified as Sat. Cannot be classified as Sat because it comes and goes. Kalatrepi tishtati. This doesn't apply to the Jagat. The Jagat cannot be classified as Asat also. It is not non-existent like the horn's hair, the hare's horn. Or like this person taking bath in mirage water, this Vandya Putra taking bath in mirage water, the son of a barren woman. So these are all non-existent things that I can never experience. When this Jagat is not like that, it is experienced. But it is not, therefore it is not non-existent, and it doesn't have independent existence because it comes and goes. So Jagat is not Sat, Jagat is not Asat. And therefore Vedanta introduces this Mithya category to indicate its lower order of reality. This entire world is in a lower order of reality. So this is the vision that I have to come to. Atma Satyam Tadanyat Sarvam Mithyeti. So for this, I have to know that this Atma behind this individual is the Atma behind this entire Jagat. That this Atma that I arrive at through this Atma Anātma Viveka is the substance, is the content of this entire Jagat. I have to come to this vision. This is called Sarvatma Bhava. Sarvatma Bhava. So this vision, this understanding of Sarvatma Bhava itself is moksha because it means Atma Satyam Tadanyat Sarvam Mithyeti. I am a higher order of reality and everything else comes down to a lower order of reality. And this being my nature, it automatically means that I am liberated from all apurnatvam. All apurnatvam, if at all we can call it apurnatvam, would only belong to a lower order of reality. And that can never apply to me who is in a higher order. So this is the vision that I have to come to. So in this regard, I'll tell a short story about a jeweler. So this jeweler had several shops in his area. And he had a son who was turning 16, 17, 18, whatever, and he thought it's a good time to engage his son in the business. Then he called his son one day and told him that, you know, that shop that we have on Ranganathan Street. So I want to close that shop. It's a very small shop. I want to close it. So you go and get all the gold from there. So this boy goes there. He gives him the keys. The boy goes there. And then he opens the shop. And he sees necklaces and bangles and rings and a lot of these ornaments. And then he's looking for the gold. So he can't find the gold. So he closes the shop and comes back to the father and tells him that I couldn't spot the gold that you're talking about. The father said, okay, so this fellow needs a lot of training. So he taught him what this gold really is in 3 steps. So the first step, he asked him, did you see the ornaments? So he said, yes. Did you see the necklace? Yes. Did you see the bangles? Yes. Did you see the rings? Yes. So this gold is not the necklace. It's not the bangle. It's not the ring. This is the first thing he has to teach him, because the starting point is he's seeing only this. He's not seeing the gold. He's seeing only the ornaments. The shiny, smooth, yellow metal underlying all of this is the gold. This is the first step. So at this point, he has introduced this idea of gold, which was not in his vision at all. So now, in his vision, there are ornaments and there is gold. This is the first step. So he's in Dvaitam at this point. It is still Dvaitam. He's in duality. Then the father tells him, now we come to the second step. And then he takes him to the shop where, to the manufacturing center where they're making all this jewelry. So there's this anvil and the jeweler is sitting there doing all this, right? So see, he says, look, I put the gold here. This is the gold, a lump of gold. I put it here. Now look what the jeweler does. He does all of this for a while and then out comes the ornament. So this gold is the cause and ornaments are the effect. So this is known as this Karana Karya Prakriya. Karana Karya Prakriya, meaning the cause effect Prakriya, a method of teaching that is used by Vedanta. Karana Karya Prakriya. Gold is the cause and ornaments are the effect. So earlier, this vision of the gold was not in his mind at all. Idea of gold was not there. This idea of gold is now introduced in the first step, the ornaments and gold. Now what happens is in the second step, this gold is now promoted to the cause. So gold becomes the cause, ornaments are the effect. Again, this is in Dvaitam. There's gold and there are ornaments. And now the father comes to the third step. He says, see, there are no separately existing ornaments at all. The ornaments are only names and forms of gold. This is the crucial third step. So he says it is one gold that has as though become many. The manyness, the plurality is not in the same order of reality as the gold. Gold is one. Ekaha, Saraha, Nityaha, Satyaha. It is the Karana. Whereas the effects are many, Anekaha. The effects don't have their own substance, Asaraha, Anekaha, Asaraha. They are only names and forms, Mithya. They are Anitya. They come and go. Gold is the Nitya. Anyway, his purpose here is to teach him that there is only the gold. So the next time he says, get all the gold, this fellow doesn't get confused. So now he sends him to the shop again, saying, now get me all the gold. And now he opens the shop. And with his new vision arising out of the third step, he sees only gold. He sees only gold. So he grabs all the necklaces, he grabs all the rings, he grabs all the bangles, puts them in a bag. And then what is left? Nothing is left because everything was gold. So everything has been swallowed by the gold. Nothing is left. Nothing else is left. He closes the empty shop and comes home. Now his father is really happy that his son is now getting trained for the business. So now we come to our subject matter. So initially, what is our vision? We see only these objects of the world and this body and the mind. In our vision, only the Anātma is there. The Atma is not there at all. So now Vedanta has to introduce there is something known as Atma. What is the Atma? Atma kaha? Therefore, sthula sukshma karana sharirat vyatiriktah panchakoshatita san avasthatraya sakshi satchidananda swarupa sanyastishtati sa Atma. So all negations, 11 negations. Why? Because I have to bring this idea of this Atma in my mind. It was not there at all. So the Satchidananda underlying all of these Anātmas is the Atma. You see the Shariratrayam, yes. You see the Kosha Panchakam, yes. You see the Avasthatrayam, yes. And the Satchidananda Swarupa, the Satchidananda underlying all of this is the Atma. That is what is the first step. Here we are still in Dvaitam because there is Atma and Anātma. The two are there. The two are there, Dvaitam. You see that many of the systems of philosophy, they come up to this point. In fact, if you look at Sankhya and Yoga, they also come to this point. They come to something similar. But then they don't see beyond this. They don't come to the second and third steps. So in their view then, the ultimate attainment becomes the abolition of this world. Chitta vritti nirodha. I have to remove all the thoughts of this world and somehow come to this Atma. I want to abide as the subject only by expelling, by removing this idea of Dvaitam, by removing duality. Because for them, the duality itself is a problem. Because as long as the duality is there, I can never have peace. I cannot get peace, security, and happiness in the midst of duality. Therefore, I have to seize all of my thoughts that track. So in Sankhya and Yoga, the Anātma and the Atma are of the same order of reality. And therefore, the Atma can get entangled with the Anātma, and that is why this entanglement is real. So the separation also has to be real. Therefore, I try to really disentangle myself from all of this Anātma by going into some kind of Samadhi avastha, because only in that kind of a situation, in the absence of duality, I can have peace, security, and happiness. In fact, many people who are studying Vedanta also think that that is what needs to be done. That is what needs to be done. Because they have not really come to the second and third stage. They have not been taught the second and third stages properly. That is why this second and third stage is important. So what is the second stage? The Karana Karya Prakriya is used, where Atma is presented as the cause and the entire world is the effect. Just like gold is the cause and ornaments are the effect. So again, here too there is Dvaitam, but we are making progress towards Advaitam. So Atma is the cause, world is the effect. This is the second stage. Then, once the cause-effect relationship has been established, then in the third stage, one is taught that there is really no separately existent world at all. The world is only Nama Rupa. There is nothing but the Atma. Just as there is nothing but the gold, there is nothing but the Atma. That you alone exist, really speaking. In the higher order of reality, there is nothing else. It is just you alone. It is Atma all the way. This is the non-dual Atma, the Advaita Atma. Because there is no second thing in the higher order of reality. If at all there is something that I can call a second thing, it's only Namarupa that depends upon me. Just as in the world of ornaments, there is really no second thing apart from gold. There's no second thing is important. That's why it's called Advaitam. Non-dual. It is not called Ekatvam or something like that. It's not just one Atma. It is then one Atma means there can be a second world. The one gold means if we think of gold as being one, then there is a necklace in the same order of reality. There's a bangle in the same order of reality. There's a ring in the same order of reality. There are other things. So as long as there is a second thing in my vision, I can never be Purna. So in the third stage, where one understands that there is nothing but the Atma, I don't have any second thing. That's why it's Advaita, non-dual. There is no duality at all. Really speaking, in reality, there is no duality. In reality, there is no plurality. There is only the only Advaita Atma, the non-dual Atma. This is the vision that I have to come to. So imagine, we can imagine a person who is in a dream. And as long as he sees the dream to be real, the names and forms in the dream to be real, then he is affected by the dream. But when one understands that dream is nothing but me, it has emerged out of me, it is sustained by me, and it goes back into me. And with this vision, if one enters the dream, then what will one say? All this is me alone. There is no second thing here other than me, just as the spider creates a web out of its own. It's an extension of its own being. We have looked at this before, this example. So this dream is similarly an extension of the waker's being. The being is only of the waker. The existence belongs to the waker only. This entire world similarly has emerged out of me, is sustained by me, goes back into me. This is the vision I have to come to. And then I have no problem with the duality, seeing the duality also, because I know that even as I see it, it's in the lower order of reality. So in Vedanta, Pujya Swamiji says this, that non-duality is not absence of duality, it is in spite of duality. Even in the presence of this duality, I should be able to say I am liberated. This is the vision that I have to come to. So Mayyeva Sakalam Jatam, Mayi Sarvam Pratishtitam, Mayi Sarvam Layang Yati, Tat Brahmadvayam Asmyaham. And all this has arisen out of me. This is Kaivalya Upanishad. The student jumps up and down in joy when he recognizes this vision. Mayyeva Sakalam Jatam, all this has arisen out of me. Mayi Sarvam Pratishtitam, all this rests in me. Mayi sarvam laying yati. All this will eventually go back into me. Tad brahmat dvayam asmi aham, that non-dual, secondless Atma Brahman I am. So for this, I have to now come to the second stage. I have to know that I am the Karana, everything else is Karya. I have to know that, finally then come to the third stage also, where I have to say the Karya doesn't exist separately from the Karana. And for this, we say the Mahavakya Vichara is required. The Mahavakya Vichara is required for me to come to this understanding that this Atma is Sarvatma. This Atma behind this individual is the Atma behind the entire Jagat. What is the Mahavakya? In fact, it is just composed of these three words: Tat, Tvam, Asi. Just these three words, the entire Vedantic sadhana of Shravanam, Mananam, and Nididhyasanam, everything is meant to understand and assimilate the meaning of Tat, Tvam, Asi. It's strange that it is just these three words that we have to. Once we get the vision of the three words, we get the message of Vedanta. What is Vedanta trying to tell me? Once I understand and assimilate the message of Vedanta, the job is done, and the message of Vedanta is taught through this Mahavakya, Tat Tvam Asi. So here it consists of the Tat Pada, which refers to the Paramatma, the creator of this entire Jagat, from whom this world originates, by whom it's sustained, and into whom this world resolves. And this Tvampada refers to this Jivatma, this created individual who thinks I am small, I am limited, I am created. So Mahavakya equates the Tatpada and the Tvampada. There is a certain equation here. So this is what we call the Jivatma Paramatma Aikyam. This vision I have to come to. That the creator and the created are essentially one. Just like this wave and the ocean are one, because there is one reality underlying them, both are water, fundamentally. So in the similar way, there is an essential reality underlying both the creator as well as the created, and there is one essential reality that is not dual. Advaitam. Ekameva dvitiyam. So far, we have done only the Tvam Pada Vichara. We have analyzed the individual. Atma Kaha is talking about this Tvam Pada Vichara. So next we have to come to this Tat Pada Vichara. We have to do an analysis of this total. Now I have to confront this world. And if this second part is not done, then I will try to expel this duality in order to be comfortable. But as we have said, that I have to be comfortable even in the presence of this duality. Apparent duality, then it becomes apparent duality, not real duality. So for this, the Tattva Vichara is required. And that is what Tattva Bodha gets into next. So we'll read that portion of Tattva Bodha. So this is on the last page of the document that I sent today. I hope that you all have that. अथ चतुर्विंशति तत्वोत्पत्ति प्रकारं वक्ष्यामः.
अथ चतुर्विंशति तत्वोत्पत्ति प्रकारं वक्ष्यामः.
Shadaji, your voice didn't come out fully. Can you say that once again?
अथ चतुर्विंशति तत्वोत्पत्ति प्रकारं वक्ष्यामः.
ब्रह्माश्रया सत्वरजस्तमो गुणात्मिका माया अस्ति.
ब्रह्माश्रया सत्वरजस्तमो गुणात्मिका माया अस्ति.
It starts off with atha. Atha means thereafter. So this thereafter means whereafter. Because whenever somebody says there, we ask where. If somebody says then, we ask when. So if somebody says thereafter, the natural question is whereafter. So this indicates the beginning of a new topic. Not an entirely different topic, logically connected to the previous one, but a new topic. So after completing these four major topics in Tattva Bodha, the first one is an introduction to the Anubandha Chatushtayam that we saw, which is in the Mangala Shloka itself. What is the Vishayaha, Prayojanam, the Adhikari and Sambandha, all of that was discussed in the first topic. Then the second topic was about what makes an Adhikari an Adhikari, and that is where we talked about the Sadhana Chatushtaya Sampatti. The third topic was the Sutra Vakyam that gave out the essence of the Vedantic teaching, Atma Satyam Tadanyat Sarvam Mithyati. The fourth topic was the Jivatma Vichara, which started with the Tvampada Vichara that started with Atma Kaha. So after these four major topics are completed, now we are coming to the fifth topic, which is this Tattva Vichara that begins here. So what is this talking about? Atha Chaturvimshati Tattvotpatti Prakaram Vakshamaha. So it's saying Utpatti Prakaram. It's talking about Utpatti Prakaram. So what does this mean? It means the method of creation or how this entire creation came about. So in some ways it is similar to that goldsmith, the jeweler taking his son to the shop and showing him how out of this one cause, that is the gold, how all these ornaments emerge. Then he can clearly see the connection, the cause-effect connection, the karya, karana karya prakriya. So now modern science also gets a lot into how this world came into being. And according to science, this world originated about 14 billion years ago. And if we ask the scientist what was there, he says there was this singularity. So what does singular? So the entire world was clearly not there. Space was not there. Time was not there. They agree with all of that. So what was there? Singularity. He calls it singularity. What is this singularity? He says, I cannot explain what it is because all the laws of science break down at that point. So what that means is that science is essentially saying, I don't know. They are saying, I don't know in a very roundabout way by calling it the singularity and then saying all that I have studied doesn't work there. So I don't know what it is. And then the next important point is with all of this progress that science has made, science has not been able to come up with any kind of a convincing explanation for how consciousness, how sentient beings come about. no explanation for consciousness. Because, again, it is related to this observer, which is beyond the scope of science. So again, science has given it a fancy name, calls it the hard problem of consciousness. So they say it's a hard problem of consciousness. At least they're acknowledging it's a hard problem. But they have really not been able to say anything about it also. There's always some conferences held about this. But so far, there has been no significant breakthroughs in that area. And Vedanta says that will continue to be like this. The hard problem will continue to be a hard problem for you because you have left the observer aside. You are totally obsessed with the observed. Now, what the Vedas and the Upanishads say is mind boggling with regards to this. And that is what is discussed here, Utpatti Prakaram, how this entire creation comes about. And it says Chaturvimshati Tattvotpatti Prakaram. So it talks about this Chaturvimshati Tattvas, this 24 categories of things that are created. Chaturvimshati Tattva, that's what this Chaturvimshati Tattva is. Which basically means Jagat Utpatti. This 24 tattvas are what make up the Jagat. Therefore, it is equivalent to saying Jagat Utpatti Prakaraha or Jagat Utpatti Prakaram or equivalently Prapanchotpatti Prakaram. All of these are equivalent. And the author says Vakshyamaha. Vakshyamaha. He's using a plural here, saying we will teach you this. We will tell you this. When he says we again, he is referring to this entire tradition of Vedanta. The entire Guru Shishya Parampara is behind this. Not my own teaching. This is the authentic teaching of the Vedantic tradition that I am talking about. He points this out. So now the second sentence says Brahmashraya Sattva Rajas Tamo Gunatmika Maya Asti. So here it uses two significant words, Brahma and Maya, and we have to understand what this is. So there are two factors. Before this Utpatti happened, before this creation happened, there are two factors there, Brahman and Maya. So we have to try to understand Brahman here. And first we will look at the etymology of the word Brahman. So Brahman word, it is derived from this dhatu, this root, Sanskritam root, dhatuhu, which is brih dhatuhu, brih vriddhau, which means to grow. And there is a certain suffix man. So brih dhatu with the man suffix becomes this Brahman. So it indicates that which grows, or in other words, that which is big. So this Brahman means that which is big. So the question arises then, when you are using this word big, how big? What do you mean by big? Here, it means limitlessly big. If we think about the word big, it is generally used as an adjective that qualifies a noun. So an adjective is something that qualifies a noun. For example, if we say a blue lotus, and lotus is the noun and blue is the adjective. So the blue adjective distinguishes this lotus from the other lotuses around it. Perhaps you're saying, get me the blue lotus, because all the other lotuses around it are red. So the adjective helps distinguish the noun from whatever is around it. So now, big is also an adjective. So the adjective generally qualifies the noun, normally speaking, like blue qualifies the lotus. But sometimes the noun also can qualify the adjective. For example, if you say a big mountain, then I know mountains, I have seen mountains. So if somebody is saying a big mountain, I have a certain expectation for what this big means in relation to a mountain. Like I don't expect a big mountain to be this big, right? When I'm thinking of a big mountain, I turn. Somebody said, look at that big mountain, I turn. And I'm expecting something really big, like the size of, you know, an Everest or K2 or something like that. But if somebody says, look at that big elephant, then in my mind I have an expectation for what the big means. It which is qualified by elephantness. The big itself is qualified by elephantness, and I understand elephant is something that can fit in this room. So then if somebody says a big mosquito, I'm not thinking about the mountain size bigness or elephant size bigness. Now my understanding of bigness is something like this. Maybe mosquitoes are generally this big, big mosquito, maybe this big, right? So clearly the noun qualifies the adjective. Or a big microbe. A big microbe, I still expect it to see it under a microscope, not with a naked eye. So this is how the noun qualifies the adjective. So the noun decides the bigness. But here, when we say Brahman is big, the adjective itself has become a noun here. Big. There is no other noun to qualify it. So this means unqualified bigness or limitless bigness. That is what Brahman is. It is limitless, basically. That's what it means. Limitless bigness. So what do we mean by this limitlessness? So if we take any object in the world, Vedanta says it has three limitations. Every object in the world has got three limitations. So what are they? It is limited by space. That is called Desha Parichinnaha. The object is limited by space. You take any object, it is limited by time also. Kala Parichinnaha. And we say it is also limited by other objects. Vastu Parichinnaha. So these are the three kinds of limitations that Vedanta talks about that any object in our experience has. So what does this space-wise limitation mean? So if we take a mountain is there, it is not here. If you take a pot may be here, but it is not in all the other places. Or even this body, it is here, not elsewhere. So every object in our experience has this desha parichinnatvam. It is limited by space. Similarly, every object has got this kala parichinnatvam also. It is limited by this time. For example, this mountain or this pot or this body, there was always some time in the past when it was not there. There is a time in the present when it is there, and there will be a time in the future when it is not there. So every object is limited by time also. And then there is this vastu parichinnaha. Every object is also vastu parichinnaha. What that means is that there may be a mountain, right? And there is a pot. The mountain is not the pot. The pot is not the mountain. The mountain is limited by its mountainness because it doesn't have potness. The spot is limited by its potness. It doesn't have mountainness. So these two objects limit each other. Similarly, every object is limited by every other object. These are the three kinds of limitations that every object has, and Brahman doesn't have any of these three types of limitations. Why? Because Brahman is all pervading. So it doesn't have this space limitation. In fact, space itself arises in Brahman. Brahman kalatraye pitishtati. It was there in the past, it is there now, it will be there in the future. So it doesn't have this time-wise limitation also. In fact, it transcends time also. The beginning of creation, there is no space and time. Brahman is there. And then it doesn't have this object-wise limitation also. Because no object is different from Brahman. Just like no ornament is different from gold. We can say the necklace limits the bangle limits the ring limits the necklace. But none of these limit the gold. Why? Because wherever the necklace is, the gold is. Wherever the mithya is, the satyam is there. And therefore, Brahman doesn't have this object-wise limitation also, because Brahman is the satyam underlying every nama rupa. And therefore, it doesn't have these three types of limitations. And therefore, it is limitless, limitlessly big. So now, we have studied what this Atma is. And this Brahman is just another name for that Atma. There is no separate Brahman. The Atma itself is called Brahman when we are talking about the context of creation, when we are talking about the total. The Atma and Brahman terms are actually used interchangeably in the Upanishads. Generally speaking, we use the term Atma in relation to an individual, and Brahman is used in relation to the total. But then Upanishads use these terms interchangeably. Therefore, this Brahman is just another name for Atma. Just like there is one actor who appears in a movie as in a drama as a beggar. And then the same actor appears in the drama as a king, wearing different costumes. That's all. But behind both the beggar and the king, there is this one actor. So similarly, behind this individual and the total, there is this one consciousness only that we have studied as Atma, the Atma that is Chit Swarupa, Ananda Swarupa. That same Atma, that is Sat Swarupa, is there behind the individual as well as the total. In the context of the total, it is called Brahman. If you take a pot, then the pot encloses a certain space. In the context of the four walls of the space, we call it the pot space. But in the absence of the four walls of the space, four walls of the pot, in fact, there are no four walls there. We can take a room, for example. In a four-walled room, or a six walls. There are two walls that are horizontal and four walls that are vertical. Whatever space is enclosed, we call it the room space. But in the absence of the same for in the absence of the structure called the room, if that is demolished, then what is the difference between this and the total space? Only one space. So the same consciousness in the context of this body, mind, etc., it's called the Atma, as though enclosed in this body mind. The same consciousness is called Brahman when these walls of the body are not there. This is Brahman, which is the first factor. Now we have discussed that this consciousness is attributeless. How do we know it's attributeless? Because of Drigdrishya Viveka. That this knower is always different from the known, and therefore this known, the attributes of the known belong to the known, never to the knower. And this ultimate observer, this ultimate Drig, that is never the observed, is this Atma. Drigeva natu drishyate. This I can never become the this. And therefore, all the attributes have to belong to something that is a this, never the I. Therefore, this consciousness is attributeless. And being attributeless, it is also changeless. We can say something is changing only if we can identify some attributes that are changing. For example, there's a mango that is green, and now the mango has become yellow. We can say the attribute of the mango changed from green to yellow. We can say the mango changed. But then if something is attributeless, you cannot talk about any change for it. And therefore, this Brahman is also changeless. Now the question is, how can this creation or this entire world emerge out of an attributeless and changeless consciousness? You require some change somewhere for the world to emerge. So we say there is a second factor. There is a second factor that accounts for all of this plurality. So it cannot, this plurality cannot come out of this changeless, attributeless consciousness alone. So there is a second factor. But the second factor is also not visible at the time of the creation, because at the time this before this world originated, there was nothing perceptible. But the second factor is there. So we take the example, and we had done this discussion in the context of the Karana Sharira also. We take the example of the mango tree and a mango seed. We said that this entire tree is there unmanifest in a potential form in the seed. In the seed, I cannot see the tree, but the entire tree that is going to come out is in a potential form in the seed. So if I were to plant this seed, then the mango tree comes out. If I plant something else, a mango tree never comes out. If I plant a stone or a lemon seed, I can never get a mango tree. And if I plant a mango seed, I can never get anything other than a mango tree. So there's a connection between the seed and the mango tree that has emerged. Without the seed, the tree cannot emerge. So the cause of the tree is in the seed. So the entire information about what type of sprout is going to come, what type of branches, what type of leaves, what type of flowers, what type of fruits, what type of seeds the fruits will contain, all of this information is there in the seed. In an unmanifest, potential, latent, dormant form. We took the example of this DVD also. So if you want to watch the Star Wars movie, if you put in some other DVD, you will not get that movie. You have to put in only the Star Wars DVD. Why? Because the movie is there in a latent, potential, dormant form in that DVD. So similarly, this dream that arises, the entire dream is there in the mind of the waker in an unmanifest form. It is only manifested at the time of the origination of the dream. So similarly, we say that this entire universe that is about to emerge, it is there in an unmanifest form. And that unmanifest seed form of this universe is what is called Maya. This is the second factor. The first factor is Brahman, the attributeless, changeless consciousness is there. This is the first factor. This Atma, renamed as Brahman in this context. And then the second factor, this unmanifest world or Maya is there, which is the entire world in an unmanifest form. Unmanifest world is called Maya. Manifest Maya is called the world. Now, both of these factors are beginningless. Brahman never had a beginning. Similarly, Maya also never has a beginning. It's beginningless. As we have seen, the entire cycles of creation and manifestation keep happening. Manifestation, sustenance, and dissolution, the cycles of creation are there. And when did this begin? We say it never began. Before this cycle of creation, there was another cycle. Before that, there was another cycle, and so on. It never began. Therefore, Brahman and Maya are both beginningless. Now, in this, we see another significant word, ashraya. So, Brahma ashraya, Brahmashraya, Maya, it says. So, what it's saying is that this Maya doesn't have its own existence. It depends upon Brahman for its existence. So Maya cannot be counted as separate. Maya is mithya. It doesn't have its own existence. It depends upon Brahman, just as all the Namarupas, the bangle, necklace and ring, etc., all of these Namarupas depend upon gold. Similarly, this Maya is all the unmanifest Namarupas, the Namarupas that have not yet emerged. They are in an unmanifest form. Now, this unmanifest Namarupas depends upon Brahman for its existence. So Brahman is the changeless one. Its presence is required because it is what gives this, it is the source of this existence and consciousness. So Brahman is the first factor. And in the presence of Brahman, Maya evolves into this world. The unmanifest Namarupas that are contained within Maya become manifest. That is what we call this universe. So this world being arising out of this mithya Maya is also mithya, because the effect inherits the attributes of the cause. These Namarupas, they originate in Maya, and therefore the world is Namarupatmakam. There is also mithya. The mithya world is manifest Namarupas that arise from this unmanifest Namarupas which are mithya. Brahmashraya Maya Asti. So as we have seen that gold plus any number of ornaments is still gold, because Satyam plus any number of Mithya Vastus is only that one Satyam. So even if this world evolves, Brahman remains changeless, the changeless one. One Satyam, there is still one Satyam here, which is Brahman. So now the specifics of the world that evolve out of Maya are given subsequently in Tattva Bodha. The important thing to remember here is that there are two factors. One is Brahman, the changeless, attributeless consciousness, which is the Satyam, and there is this Mithya Maya, from which this entire world evolves, and there is a mixture of Satyam and Mithya here. And then mixture of Satyam and Mithya continues even after the evolution of the world also. Now the details of how this world evolves, etc., are given subsequently, and we will continue that in the next class. Om Purnamadah Purnamidam Purnat Purnamudachyate Purnasya Purnamadaya Purnamevavashishyate Om Shanti 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 Hari Om Shri Gurubhyo Namaha Hari Om. Any questions or comments? Yes, Balaji? Yes.
Yeah, I wanted to understand. I mean, we dealt with in the last class, we
Yes.
dealt with the Satyananda Swarupam,
Yes.
right?
Yes.
Of the Atman.
Yes.
Now, we also said it is not sorrow. It is not, we also proved that it cannot be the sorrow or unhappiness or whatever it
Yes.
is.
Yes. Yes.
But we never dealt with what is the sorrow, what is the unhappiness.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, in the all the questions that we have negated all the anatmas, we have done all that, and then said this is Atma, and this is it's a Swarupam.
Yes.
But now we also keep imposing this sorrow, but what is it? Are we going to deal with that sometime?
So I had referred to this a bit in the last class also, and we said that you are the source of happiness and you are the source of sorrow also. The objects inherently don't have sorrow and inherently don't have happiness either. And the Atma is Ananda Swarupa. It is whole, limitless, full, complete. There is no trace of sorrow in the Atma. The question is, how does sorrow arise? Right? So, if Atma is of the nature of happiness, how does sorrow arise in me? That is the question, right?
Correct.
So, the answer is similar to how does snake arise in the rope, right? So, how does the snake arise in the rope in which there is no snake? We say it arises out of ignorance. It arises out of ignorance of knowing the nature of the rope. When I really know the rope as a rope, right, then I will never not superimpose the snake upon it. So now, if I really know the nature of the Atma, then I will never say that I am sorrowful. I will never say that. I will know that I am Ananda Swarupa. I am limitless, full, whole, and complete, no matter what happens to the body and the mind. But if I don't know the nature of the Atma, then I superimpose what is the condition of the body and the mind upon the Atma. And I say that I am decaying, I am sick, I am dying. Right? Or I say that so and so that belongs to me is perishing. Right? Now, this idea of belonging to me, I am XYZ, etc., all superimposition that arises out of ignorance of not knowing the nature of the Atma. There has been an Atma Anātma mix up. Only in the presence of the Atma and Anātma mix up, what is happening is that this consciousness is mixed up with inert matter. And matter is inherently decaying, dying, perishing. And therefore, there is sorrow. Because I have mixed up the consciousness with the Anātma, Atma and Anātma, and I say, I am subject to all of these changes. Asti, Jayate, Vardhate, Viparinamate, Apakshiyate, Vinashyate. I attribute the limitations of the Anātma to myself. See, if the Anātma never says, I am sorrowful, the I who say I am sorrowful, you need a conscious being to say I am sorrowful. The fundamentally inert thing will never say I have sorrow. Right? So the Jnani who has now recognized that Atma is limitless, full, complete, whole, there is no trace of sorrow in Atma, it is Ananda Swarupa, also will never say I am sorrowful. Because his understanding of I is the Atma alone. There is nothing else that is mixed up with it. So the matter doesn't say I am sorrowful. The Jnani also doesn't say I am sorrowful. So who is the one who says I am sorrowful? It is the one who has mixed up the Atma and Anātma. And why is he saying I am sorrowful? Because of ignorance. So does that answer your question?
Thank you.
Yes.
I have one more question.
Yes.
Just now we introduced these two words, Maya and Mithya.
Yes.
Are we going to define the word Mithya as well, or are they different? Or what is the subtlety between those two?
Yes. So the Mithya is basically the Satyam and Mithya are two words that describe my understanding of the status of reality of a given thing. Right? Like bangle is Mithya, gold is Satyam. So Mithya is purely Nama Rupa. When I say something is Mithya, I cannot ask somebody to say, get me some Mithya. So there is no object called Mithya in the world. Or get me some Satyam. There is no object called Satyam in the world. The word Satyam and Mithya reveal my understanding of the status of existence of objects in the world. So they are like metadata, they are like metadata, so to say, right? They are meta terms. So when we say Maya is Mithya, we are really saying that Maya is of a lower order of reality. When we say Brahman is Satyam, we are saying Brahman is of a higher order of reality. So
Yeah.
does that clarify?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Thank you.
Sure. Yes, Vishwanathanji?
Yes, when I try to understand one question here,
Yes.
the one example what you have narrated with respect to the jeweler story,
Yes, yes.
between the son and the father,
Yes.
and we talked about his ignorance. So
Yes.
in our system, or maybe within the Jivatma, where is this ignorance is located? Is it part of the mind or it's part of my body? I don't know. I'm trying to understand or clarification from your side.
Yes, yes, yes. So
Avidya, we'll call it about avidya. You say in
yes,
Sanskrit is avidya.
yes, yes. So we will come to that point,
Yeah.
which is basically this Maya, right? We say it has got two properties.
Mm.
One is it has got two powers, really speaking. One is a power to conceal, and the other is a power to project.
Okay.
So this Maya, which has the power to conceal, right?
Mm.
So the only way the one can become the many, right?
Mm.
So the one has to become the many.
Mm.
So for the one to become the many, the idea that there is this one Satyam, right? That is concealed by Maya. And then this Nama Rupas are projected. So we will talk about more about this in the context of Maya, but this Mula Vidya, this ignorance, it has its origins in Maya.
Oh.
In this power of concealment that Maya possesses, that is where this ignorance is.
Okay. So which means the Mula Vidya, what you're talking about, these exist together with Maya, and it has got no Chat Chit Anand. That's what my understanding.
Yes, in fact, the terms Maya and Mula Vidya, they are all used synonymously.
Oh.
So they are Avyakta, Maya, Mula Vidya, Shaktihi, Prakritihi. These are all synonymous terms.
Oh. That's what my understanding clarification. Thank you, sir. Thank you very much.
Okay. So we'll conclude then.
Yes.
Hari.
Hari Om. Thank you.
Hari Om. Hari Om.
Hari Om. Hari.
Hari Om.
Hari Om.
Hari Om.
Hari Om, Satyaji. Thank you.
Hari Om.